All right, so it's time for my Should You Read for the Vorkosigan Saga. This is my series spoiler-free review where I kind of help you decide, is this for you? Is it worth your time? Because series are a time investment. They're a money investment. I've been working on this series for 2 years. If you're not new to my channel, you know I adore it, okay? And so I always put disclaimers at the top, and it's going to be spoiler-free, and especially for this series, at the end, I'll put my recommended reading order with caveats. I don't think of it as like, you have to read it like this or you will fail. Like, I don't think, this is not a series that comes that way. It's not how it was written. It's not how the author had it in mind. But also, I just want you to know, Lois McMaster Bejeweled is a Midwestern queen. And as a Midwesterner, it makes me excited that I finally got to read a long, epic, backlist sci-fi series by someone from Ohio. It was pretty great. I enjoyed it. It's just a nice little thing for myself. But yeah, this is a series that its first entry was written in the mid-1980s, or at least published in the mid-1980s, and its most recent entry was a novella published, I believe, in 2018, and we do not currently have anything else on the horizon. She is still writing in her fantasy stuff. I have not read her fantasy stuff. Do not ask me questions about her fantasy stuff down in the comments, because I don't know the answers. I'm going to read them, but I have no answers to those questions. I have just been reading this for 2 years. So that leads us to the beginning part of all my Should You Reads. What context do I bring to this? So I have a Discord. It's a public Discord, and someone was like feeling nostalgic and wanted to read this, and I had just bounced hard off of Foreigner, which is another backlist sci-fi series. And I'm like, okay, I'll try this out. And so I opened up a buddy read Discord because people wanted to read it together, and I started with Shards of Honor, and then I instantly fell in love. Okay, like almost tried, like if there were matching editions of any of this, I would have purchased them, okay? Trade paperback or anything like that. I don't really want the mass markets because they're a little too tight for my little hands. But if I could, I would have, okay? I was obsessed from day one, okay? So I come in day one. That doesn't mean every book in this series has been 5 stars. But what has enhanced the experience is that every couple months, I would open a new chat, we'd read the next book, and it was very casual, very organic buddy read. Some people are still reading it now. There were a lot of new people and a lot of people where it was a reread, and it was just a very easy, no-stress community reading experience. And I loved it, you know? So it's just also getting to be in the echo chamber of, yeah, we all love this stuff. Okay, so that's what I come to this with. Now, that said, I have a pros category and I have a caveats category. I do know this won't be for everyone, okay? But for me, this is exactly like when I had in mind long-running sci-fi series, this is exactly what I knew I wanted. So what is it about at its core? Because it's 16 books and a handful of novellas and short stories. We're exploring a universe, a galaxy, primarily through the lens of the Vorkosigan family. Now, not always. There are a few entries here where we are not following a member of the Vorkosigan household. But typically how it approaches it, and it's not quite as epic as Star Wars or anything like that, but if people are always like, Star Wars is usually about the Skywalkers, until it's not. This is primarily about the Vorkosigans. And it does primarily follow one Vorkosigan in particular for the majority of the books. But for the most part, it's just every book's a new planet, a new idea, a little episodic thing we're trying to look into, and it is very fun. And it reminds me of watching like a long-running TV show like Bones or something like that, where as I get further in, I just know these people so well, and I get to see a lot of payoff. Because we are spanning, oh gosh, 40 years, 45 years over the course of these 16 books as well. So we're spanning a lot of time. It's a saga, but it's not like about any one particular arc. Honestly, most of the arcs are very character driven, and they're not about like big moments in the galaxy we're looking at, if that makes sense. So if you need like a big, this war happened, or there's this thing going, I don't know, there's not like, there's adventures and there's plot. But like, if you ask any Vorkosigan fan, the arcs we're talking about is, oh, that's when this happened to this character, and like, it's about the character milestones, not about the world milestones. Now, let's talk about the pros and the sci-fi elements you're going to find in this series. First of all, it's the character investment. Like I was just talking about, it's the character arcs. It's the character payoff. You literally get to follow a character from when he was born until he is 40. Okay? Change happens. He is dynamic. He's also a lot. Like, he's probably our main character. Miles Vorkosigan he's our Nepo baby. He's probably our main character. One of the cons is he's a Nepo baby. But he like wears that on his sleeve, and you know that a lot of what he does is because of his privilege and his entitlement, but he's also still lovable, but also he is the creator of almost all of his problems. But it's still fun to explore and just watch him do stuff. He's not my favorite character in the series, but he's a very fun character to follow, also because he's a disabled character. He's a main character who is disabled. He is born kind of with bad bones because of something that happens in a book, and so he's constantly replacing it, but he's never going to be as tall as everyone else. And then there are other things that happen that give him different chronic issues throughout the series. So if you're ever looking for a series that has a character who does not let his disabilities stop him from doing what he wants, who's always looking for accommodations and making the world like allow him to exist as loud and as big as he wants to, right there, Miles Vorkosigan, hands down. We also have Cordelia, who's not in there nearly as much as I want, but she's in 3 books, which, like, 3 out of 16 ain't bad. And if you love a competent queen, she's amazing. I love her. I love how she problem solves. I love how she reads people. She's so good at reading people. So she's amazing. She's who you meet first in the series chronologically. She's Miles' mother. And then there's another character, like there's 2 other characters that are pretty fun and important. One is Ivan, who is Miles' cousin. He's normally the sidekick. He's normally comic relief, but he does get his own book. And he's a very fun foil to Miles. Like, Miles wants the world. Ivan just wants to, like, have fun, get by, just live life. He's great. And then we have Mark, who I can't talk about a lot, but Mark is a very complicated character. And I think really can highlight a lot of the things that would be a con and a pro for people reading characters. Like, if you want a character that is gray, and we're not talking like morally gray or anything like that, we're talking like a flawed human having to basically have not even a redemption arc. He just needs to recover from what was done to him, what that had him do, and like how does he want to deal with people in the future. Fascinating character. But like I said, we cover these huge spans of time, so the payoff is amazing. By the time you get to Ivan's book, it is glorious, okay? It is phenomenal. So, unique planets. All right, this is a sci-fi series. We go to a lot of planets. There are going to be a lot of unique planets. We got things that are completely terraformed, so we can just, like, live on it. We have things that are in, like, those little bubbles that we have to be in. We have planets that use, like, cryo chambers as a way to prevent death, but also for voting systems. That one was really wild. We have the Cetaganda Empire, who are very big on eugenics and genetic manipulation, and they're kind of our scary guy, but also it's kind of Cold War scary, but they are a lot. We have our high-tech utopian society that we actually like interrogate right from the get-go. What's good about it, what's bad about it. Very Star Trek type place, although they live all on stations. They don't like have a planet. There is still Earth. We have isolated planets that are completely out of nowhere. We have stations where there is no gravity. We do have artificial gravity. And we also have, like, the classic backwater planets that are doing all of the ethically questionable things, okay? So you get all the types of planets you're going to visit, you're going to explore. If you like seeing new places and having adventures on them, it's great. It's pretty great. And so then we have the tech. All right, one of the best techs, and it's explored how it's used a lot, are uterine replicators, which means a child can be brought to term outside of a human body. The repercussions of just the idea of this tech is thought through. It is thought out. It is explored. It's awesome. I already told you about the cryo storage. We have artificial gravity, and we also even have the idea of what they tried to do before artificial gravity. Like, interesting. So interesting. Cloning, memory chips, the pros and cons of both of those, genetic manipulation of humans in general, and the ethical and non-ethical version of those things. Just so much tech. It's also pro-LGBTQ. There are gender fluid characters. There are characters that are in gay relationships. I don't believe it's any of our main characters, although there is like a very strong side character that we have for a lot of the series who is one of those gender fluid individuals. This book was written very long time ago, so it doesn't use the singular they, it uses it, but like herms are very normal in this world. And Beta Colony, the kind of utopian place, is like, has this way where everyone can like use earrings and rings and stuff to basically tell people what is your sexual preference and things like that. So it is very sex positive, it is very LGBTQ friendly, which especially for when it was written, is like a big deal. That said, we're going to talk about the when it was written cons in a minute. And also, I think a thing that is a real big pro, and it's a thing that I think's been getting ground lately with authors like T. Kingfisher, is this feels cozy and comfortable. Like, I could always pick up one of these books and know I was in for a good time. But it also balances that with heavy themes and topics, and like, it has stakes, and I think it has a good blending of those things, and it kind of tricks you into consuming it. Like, one minute you're having an adventure story, and the next you are contemplating the consequences of war. Like, and you can chuckle and feel sad all in the same book. So you have a vast array of emotions, but I would say for the average person consuming the series, the emotional gut punch are always worth it for us, but it's typically an oddly cozy time. Not that it's kind of like how a murder procedural is a cozy time. There are non-cozy things happening. But, like, if you like watching things like Bones because it's your comfort show, I think this is, like, a similar vein. Now, let's talk about the caveats, right? So, again, this started in the 1980s, which means, and it doesn't happen that often, I think it's less than a handful of times throughout all 16 books, but there are on-page sexual assault scenes, okay? I personally think they are all done with care and respect, and they make sense in the moments, but I know a lot of people don't want to read those things. And also, because I was just talking about how this can feel cozy, that is the definition of not cozy. So that can be very jarring, right? So I can totally see that, and I just want to like put it out there that that's a part of what's in these books, partially because I don't necessarily know if the author would change it if she wrote it today. I haven't read any interviews or anything, but it was more the norm to not shy away from writing out those scenes in detail in the 80s and 90s when these books were written. There are uncomfortable human character moments, okay? Like, I brought up a character, and I brought him up vaguely because I don't want to talk about his arc too much because it's kind of spoilery, but, like, very morally wrong things are done by characters that you like, or you know that the book wants you to root for them eventually. Whether you personally will like them is a different story, but it is clear that the book wants you to follow their journey and become attached to them, even though they make huge, morally wrong mistakes, okay? That's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and because she's playing in that really gray space, not everyone's going to like how she executes that. It's going to miss for some people completely, especially if you have experience in the thing the character is being bad towards. Like, I could totally see it not working out, okay? Now, this one is less about, like, trigger warnings and stuff like that. This is more like, sometimes they're adventure books. Sometimes it's straight up an adventure book, a spy novel, or something like it's just like a mystery detective thing. Like, it is plot driven, which that's how you know this is so well done, because I don't really like plot driven things, but I love these. But then sometimes the books are a little more domestic. Like, there's politics in the backgrounds, there's games afoot in the background, but it's sometimes, like, my favorite books are the books where the characters are just, like, meeting with people, talking with people, thinking about stuff, just going through the day-to-day life in Barrayar, which is one of the planets that's a little more backwater. Like I said, there's a lot of planets, okay? Barrayar is probably our main planet. That's where the Vorkosigans live. And so I could totally see some people who want the adventure not liking the domestic books, and vice versa. Like, that's totally a thing. Like, I think the last book in the series is not adventure-y, and I could see people being like, it's a good book, but it's not my favorite because there was no adventure. And then, let's see. Oh, this is another one I see a lot, and it does not bother me at all. But there's the insta-love allegations. There are two reasons why this doesn't bother me, but I totally see why it could bother other people. One, I've had insta-love happen to me. Like, I know for a lot of people, insta-love's not a thing. But, like, I have multiple times in my life met an individual and instantly had emotional chemistry with them. Maybe I wouldn't call it love, but, like, it doesn't take me a long period of time to become ride or die into trying something out, okay? Maybe that's a character flaw, but it means I can relate to the existence of that. Two, there is a cultural difference. So there is a character who starts this off with insta-love in our first book, Shards of Honor. He is from a backwater world culturally that's very different than what we are used to now, and I think it really informs why he does what he does, especially when you get more of his backstory. Like, he has never met a person like this who fits him so well, and that's very hard for him because of stuff that I won't talk about, and it's like, yeah. And he's a blunt individual who goes for what he wants. Like, for some people, that's gonna feel like it came out of left field. For me, having read the whole series and also just not hating insta-love in general, I'm like, this is fine. But it is a general joke that proposals kind of come out of nowhere. Okay, it's a general joke in the series. It's fine. I mean, it's fine for me. It might not be fine for you, hence it's in the caveats section. And then my last one is cultural dissonance. And I think that's kind of what I was bringing up before. It's just like, because we're going to all these planets, because we are generally spending a lot of time on Barrayar, which the book series I do think is, claiming is not culturally up to date, has a lot of flaws. That means you're just gonna be in a lot of very uncomfortable situations and moments, and it's going to, like I said, she's going to approach topics, and you may or may not like her execution of them. I will say, for me, in my taste, and I am more forgiving than the average reader of Intent, especially, it's probably because she's from the Midwest and I'm from the Midwest, and we grew up in very similar cultures, so I'm like a little wired for certain compromises in thought pathways. But it could rub you the wrong way. You might not agree with her, and I think that's valid. I personally don't think the books are preachy. I think the books actually allow a lot for you to internally think about, how do I feel about this moment? But that dissonance, you might not want it. You might not like how she does it. It is what it is. Luckily, I think you'll find out very early on if these caveats are deal breakers for you. So that brings us into the reading order. I generally go roughly in world chronological order, and I'll point out where I break that rule and whether or not you can break that rule. You can do whatever you want. I will point out the 4 spots as I go through this list that people can recommend you jump in. There are other spots that even the author talks about, but I'm going to read through my order and then I'll interject as I go. Let me see. Do I have enough space to show you books? All right. Editing me is going to hate this. Okay. Shards of Honor. This is the first book I read. It's the first book chronologically in world. I love it. Followed immediately by Barrayar. I always say, these are 2 books you should read relatively close to each other. They're a contained duology. It's about Cordelia. I love this duology. I think it has a lot of the pros and the cons all in one. If you really dislike it more than you like it, I would maybe recommend reading one more book if you're still on the fence and you haven't made a decision. But I think this will really show you the highlights and the lowlights all together. The next one is Warrior's Apprentice, which also was published the same year as Shards of Honor. A lot of people will say you can start with Warrior's Apprentice. I like to start with Cordelia. A, because it's chronologically earlier, and B, because I love Cordelia a lot. Okay? So I'm always going to recommend Shards of Honor first. But Warrior's Apprentice is where you meet Miles as like a person. So, if you don't mind spoilers for Shards of Honor and Barrayar, you can start with Warrior's Apprentice and meet Miles. If you like adventure stories, you might want to start here more. The first 2 books are a little more domestic-ish, even though there's a lot of action in them too. It's hard to define the plots of a Bejeweled work. But Warrior's Apprentice is kind of like an adventure book. Young man gets out of military school trying to prove his worth, ends up in trouble, etc., etc. So you can start there with Miles. That's the first Miles book. We have the Vor Game, and if you ever see lists that mention the story, the Weatherman, that is now incorporated in almost every copy of the Vor Game, I believe, is like the first couple chapters. We have Cetaganda. And then the next one is chronologically the next one, Ethan of Athos. It's a non-Vorkosigan book, though, and again was published the same year as Shards of Honor and Warrior's Apprentice, and it doesn't have characters in the Vorkosigan family. It has like one character that you meet in Warrior's Apprentice, but it's not like that important. So it's a standalone. You can read it in isolation if you want. I think it's a fun one. I think it really represents the adventure style. You just don't have any of the characters that you get the long arcs with. We have then a 3 short story collection or novella collection of Miles stories. One of them is out of order. The other 2 are chronologically. This is where they should be, or at least when I was Googling on the wikis. So The Mountains of Mourning is the first story and technically takes place between Warrior's Apprentice and Vor Game. So if you're truly like, I want in-world chronological order, then you need to get Borders of Infinity and read the first story. You don't have to. It's not that big a deal. Then the next 2, Labyrinth and the Borders of Infinity, they're chronologically in order. And then this is the point probably where, at least for the books with Vorkosigan people in them, you want to read them in this order, okay? Because then these things affect plot points that you will be spoiled for. Like, you'll catch up. Like, I don't think you couldn't read a book out of order. It's just that if you care about spoiler points for milestones in a character journey, Now we're getting into the point where it's a little less episodic, and maybe you should read these like in order that I'm saying. So Brother in Arms, that's a big deal book. We have Mirror Dance, another big deal book. These two are kind of like back to back to each other, like they're very related. Memory, this is a favorite in the Vorkosigan Saga era. It's also a big turning point book. We have Komarr, A Civil Campaign, and Winterfair's Gift that are all kind of like their own arc. I think it's called Miles Finds Love is actually the arc book that they're in. Civil Campaign is my favorite in the whole series. Oh my god. Is it my... Yes, it's my... It is one of my 5 stars in the whole series. Oh, I love it. And then Falling Free. So this is a book that's also a non-Vorkosigan people book, and it was published earlier. It wasn't one of the first. This is chronologically one of the earliest, though. So this is 300 years-ish before Shards of Honor, I think. It doesn't have any of the characters in Vorkosigan, but it introduces a group of individuals that are important in the next book. So if you want to make sure you have context, you could read this one next, but you can really read it whenever. There's no rules for this one. But then Diplomatic Community, like I said, it deals with the people introduced, their origin story in Falling Free. And then you have Captain Vorpatrils Alliance, which is Ivan's book. Cryoburn, which is your last adventure book. Okay, Cryoburn's the last one. It's the last Miles adventure story. And then the finale book that we currently have is The Gentleman Joel and the Red Queen. I don't think we'll get another book because it feels like a cathartic send-off ending type of book. And then I am putting this here because this is what I did. And I truly don't think you have to read this, but it was also a palate cleanser for like, oh my god, I'm done. There's nothing left. What do I do? And this is Dreamweaver's Dilemma. You can find it in this short story collection. The audiobook narrator is the same audiobook narrator for all of this, who I love. Also an acquired taste, but I went through the majority of these books with this narrator, and I miss him. I miss him quite often. I got very used to his delivery. At first, I was like, I can't have you being Cordelia. Now I don't care. Now I'm like, yeah, go ahead, be Cordelia. It's fine. It's weird how I've been switched. Now, this one is, I think, the first story ever written in the Vorkosigan world. But at this point, Barrayar, where the Vorkosigans are from, doesn't even exist yet in her mind as an author. It just takes place on Earth. Beta Colony exists. And what is fun about it is it takes place like near Toledo, Ohio, which I think is just funny because there are no sci-fi books that take place in Toledo, Ohio with like nuclear waste by Cleveland. Like, what a time. But it was really cathartic, and actually I think really showed her pacing. Like, her plotting and pacing in this novella I thought was really representative. But I wouldn't say that this is a good representation of what Vorkosigan has to offer, so much as I just was very sad and wasn't ready to leave, and so I read this, and it kind of helped me say goodbye. And so what I'm saying is you don't have to read this, and if you want to read it, you can read it whenever. So those are all of my spoiler-free thoughts about Vorkosigan. Should you read it? I think you should at least give it a shot. Truly. It's so hard to define what it is, so it's also equally hard for me to really tell who will bounce off of it and who will also love it, because on paper, so much of this series is not for me. I am not plot-driven. I don't like a lot of the episodic tropes she plays with, but I love it. And I'm like constantly like, I wonder when I'm going to start my reread, in a year, in 2 years. Like, luckily I have all her fantasy, which again, I have not read, so do not ask me about the fantasy. I am a teacher. If you ask me about the fantasy books, I will know you have not watched this, and I will call you out. I get so sick and tired of my students not reading things that I say write out to them and not listening to me. So I haven't consumed it. I'm going to. I am so pumped. I am beyond excited. Anyways, if you've made it this far, if you have any questions, you can leave them down below. If you have things you want to add as a Vorkosigan lover, spoiler-free, you can add that in the comments. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here... Oh, I don't know. I guess a planet. Any planet. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.